Hey everyone, welcome to February 24th. It is the end of another great week. I hope you guys had a fantastic week. Mine was very busy. I have a new microphone, so hopefully it's picking up really good. I have a new camera too, but it's not online right now, just the new microphone. So we have a lot of amazing questions already, which is fantastic, and let's get into them because they're really good. The first one is from Clint East, and he says, "Hey Phil, what do you do when you lose inspiration to play guitar?" And he says he's been there many times. Me, the first thing I do is I stop playing guitar. Kind of look at it like painting yourself in a corner. Sometimes, when I'm not feeling it for a while, I just stop. Maybe I'll play another instrument. Maybe I'll just go, do something else for a little while. Maybe see a show. But you got to recognize when you're not inspired, it's not the end of anything. It's just a dull spot. So don't be afraid to go do something else. Last time I had a really big issue with not wanting to play guitar. I bought some these really nice super light aluminum scooters and like skateboards with handlebars for me and the kids, and we just did that for a while. Let's see. Next one is greetings from Germany. It's not too late here to watch the stream, and so you said I'll ask you now. How do you go about playing along with backing tracks? I use backingtracks.com or YouTube for backing tracks. I do it all the time. Basically, all I do is just set my an amplifier that I'm most comfortable with, and I just set my level to mix right into them. Some people use headphones, processors. I just use a small amp and play along. So, and I just pick and play along. But those are the two places I use. He also has stated that he knows the pentatonic scale. But he's not sure what to do with it once the music is playing. Well, that's a good example. You need to know what key you're in. You need to learn to float around. The best thing to do with a scale is not just learn a scale and then try to push it into music. You need to pick a guitar solo that you like by an artist and then analyze it. Analyze what scale it is. Now, pentatonic is great because almost all the blues and rock players are going to be on the pentatonic. So what you want to do is take a second and pull one of those solos up and look and analyze how do they move around the scale. The best way to do something is to learn from somebody else. So I would start there. But otherwise, you'll just keep playing that same pentatonic box pattern, and it does get old and you won't be very inspired. So in other words, you have to learn to copy before you can create. David Rose says, hello from Alabama. Which modeling amp do you like? Recommend? ? I am learning. He's leaning towards the Marshall Code 25 and 50. I have not tried the Marshall Code 25 or 50. I have tried the Katana, and believe it or not, I'm in the market for a modeling amp, and the three contenders right now is the Yamaha TH10 X or the 10. Or the Katana. And I reviewed the Katana, I reviewed the 100 watt, and believe it or not, I'm leaning towards the 50 just because I want a small practice amp downstairs. And Roland Cube is another one I'm looking at. So I'll let you know what I find out. I've been looking at all kinds. I have a Mustang, but I'm just looking for something new and exciting. Okay, also says, do you think it's worth upgrading at the 8-inch speaker in the Fender Mustang in my case? No. Or should I better buy a cheap 112 cab and solder the speaker out of the Mustang? I wouldn't worry about the speaker. Yes, would a better speaker make the amp sound better? But a speaker is a huge difference to an amplifier. It'll make a big improvement. However, in an inexpensive modeling type amplifier, the speaker makes a difference, but it's not a significant enough a difference that I would say put money into the amplifier, especially an 8-inch speaker, because the problem you're going to have is if you pay to upgrade it. Well, what Mustang do you have that has an 8-inch speaker? I have to figure that out. The Mustang should have a 10, right? No, I could be wrong. You might have an 8 in your Mustang one. Either way, don't upgrade the speaker. Yes, if you're going down that route, use it as a head and put it into a cabinet, but don't buy an expensive 8-inch speaker, because once you get rid of the amp, you'll never get your money back, and I don't know if you will hear a huge enough difference that you'll feel. I would actually just move on from amps. In fact, even a speaker cabinet at that price point, you're better off moving up amps. Next one is, hey Philip, how does the nut affect the guitar's tone, and what is the differences between bone and Graphtec? Well, a nut really affects the guitar's tone, and a lot of people believe it only helps or enhances the open strings because of the fact that once you fret it, your string is between the fret and it's kind of chopped off what's behind it or above the string, so the nut doesn't come to play. My experience is not that the nut is important because it's constantly touching the string at all times, regardless of you're fretting or not. It's the thing that's letting vibration travel, and if the softer it is, the more it will absorb than transfer. And you want to transfer vibration. And regardless how you feel electric guitars work, it's not that it's a tone issue of the instrument itself. It's just the string itself does change. So, but my personal experience is that bone and graphite are not a huge difference from each other. So I would not rip bone out to put graphite or vice versa. People do it all the time. You can do that, but I wouldn't say you could hear a huge difference. I don't hear a massive difference. Not enough that I would want to put money on the table and have you test me on it, but I can hear a difference between a soft plastic and those two materials. So something to think about. Diggin France says, hey, he got an Epiphone Wildcat a week ago. I think we talked about that last week. That's a great guitar, so that's awesome. That's always nice when you get a new guitar. Darren says, hey, Phil, love your stuff. How would you compare the USA Charvel to the Wayne Charvel necks to the 2016 models? The new Charvels are not like the Wayne necks. The Wayne necks are more like original Charvels were. The new American USA Charvel stuff is exactly, it feels a lot reminiscent to the necks to the import Mexican-made Charvels, which are good feeling necks, but they're not that slightly thinner, flatter Wayne neck. So if I was looking for a more traditional Charvel feel, the Wayne Charvel feels more to me than they do. And ironically, yesterday I did some setups on some Jacksons, and one of the Jacksons was both were Japanese. One was a pre and post Fender Jackson. Same exact color, same exact model. The irony of having those two guitars in the shop at the same time was kind of strange. And the two most different necks ever in the history of necks. The pre-Fender one neck was thin like a wizard, and the post-Fender neck was thick, even thicker than a Fender Strat neck. So interesting, both guitars made in Japan, not by Fender, but yet somehow the Fender effect on things seems to be the thick in the neck. So let's see. Let's go to another one. Let's find some good questions here today. Tyler wants to know, Phil, he was wondering how I feel on the new Bassbreaker amp series by Fender. I feel it was a colossal failure as a series. I think the 1830 did not sell. The 45 did not sell very well. The 15 was the star of the show. However, it got rumored really quickly that there was problems with it. Obviously, Fender had to correct a couple issues with it. The 7-watt sounded fantastic, but it seemed a little lacking in features. Overall, the amps are good. There's no issue. In fact, as a line of amps, it's one of Fender's best line of amps they've done in the last few years. But as sales, as performance, I know you're kind of asking what do I think of the series, but how it really did is not very well. So will we see them all continuing on? I don't know. So that's the next one. Let's see. Okay, Matt wants to know, what are my thoughts on using a noise gate with a compressor? And he says, I have noise issues with house wiring plus a few noisy drive pedals. I keep my compressor on majority of the time. Yeah, if you have those three problems, you need a noise gate. The only thing that's going to clean up the noise for you, if you're having house wiring issues, you need a power conditioner, something that will actually take the power and like a monster power conditioner and condition the power, and that will help a little bit. And then the noise gate will choke everything off, especially that compressor and those noisy overdrive pedals. It'll choke all that down as well. So it's not my ideal situation to have to use a noise gate, but you have to do it. So let's see. Dave wants to know, he recently bought a Gretch 6129 T, which has the tremolo in it. That's a cool guitar. And or should we say vibrato? Which amp would you recommend? The Mesa Boogie Express Plus or the Fender Deluxe Reverb? Well, it's tough with that question. That's two totally different amps. I own a Fender Deluxe Reverb. It's right here, and 65 Deluxe Reverb, and so I like it. I have owned the Mesa Boogie Express 25, which had the 110 in it. I believe it was before they did the Plus edition. I think the Plus one's a new one. Both are fantastic amps. it's hard thing to. Here's the thing: if you have a Gretch, if you want to do the Gretch vibe, the Fender leans into that much better than the Mesa does. The Mesa has this huge, fat, perfect, clean sound, but that Fender Deluxe has that classic tone. So you're just going to have to decide if you want the old classic sound or if you just want to go with a bigger, fuller sound. Both are made pretty good too, and I think they're about the same price. Let's see. Next is, hey, somebody says hi from Chandler. That's only funny because I'm basically in Chandler. Let's see. Okay, Mac wants to know, what's my favorite 412 cabinet, what speakers, and why? My favorite 412 cabinet is a Marshall 1960, and I think it's because I've owned personally a ton of 412s, and the Mesas are really boomy and bassy, and they're great for if you're low-end metal chunking and stuff. But to me, just the Marshall cabinets just have that sound. Think of it this way: they're kind of realistically, almost everything's a copy of that Marshall cabinet, right? I always call it the grandfather, right? It's the original. Like Ibanez made the first kind of commercial solid body 7-string, so every 7-string has to kind of have some of that vibe in it for a while. So I just like Marshalls, and with Celestions, vintage 30s are fine for me. That's what I would use. I'm in the market, I think, to get one again. I've owned the Agnator one. It's great. I mean, there's really just a box of speakers in it, so there's not a whole lot that people can do to make it better than somebody else and worse than somebody else. It's a speaker thing, but I like the Marshall one, and the main reason is, plus I know the Marshall 412 is always worth something. So it's always nice to have, when you're putting your money into this stuff. The best thing about what we do is when we put money in this stuff, we get to sell it and get some of that money back, or all the money back if we're lucky. But a lot of hobbyists don't have that luxury, or a lot of artists don't. Right? You buy your paints and they're gone. Let's see. Somebody was saying, hey, it's a bummer about the sound last week. Yeah, you know what? I don't know if it was the storm coming in, wind, cell phone towers, what it was. Okay, so his question was about caps and keeping from getting shocked. Any chance you could do a video about electric shock dangers? Yeah, don't stick your hands in a tube amplifier. I have a scar. I don't know if you can see it. It's right there. I know it's kind of faded now. I have a scar because I got burned by an amplifier once, reaching my hand into it. And the only reason that's an important story is the amp was unplugged, and I waited for it to not only cool down, but hopefully discharge off the caps. I didn't even come close to the caps. I probably would have been really sorry if I did that. The problem with amplifiers is they're not all The problem with amplifiers is they're not all equal. In other words, some amps can get a lot hotter quicker than others because of how they bias them. So what happened in my case was I bought it. It was my personal amp. I bought a Marshall amp, and it was having an issue. And what I didn't recognize the issue was somebody had biased it to holy heck, and it was running super burning hot. And so I turned it off, unplugged it, waited about 5 minutes, which was not enough time in this case because it only had been on for about 5 minutes. And when I touched it, it burned my arm so bad, and it was just a second. So what I tell everybody is, amps are, unfortunately, they're a pretty dangerous thing to mess with. I don't want to overly scare anybody about amplifiers, but I don't want you to also not think that they're pretty dangerous. So especially caps, because what's happening is those caps are storing up that electricity, and they kind of keep it in there. And what I would do is, if you're ever thinking about it, I would make videos, but you can watch videos where people take a screwdriver and discharge it. I've seen a ton of amp builders over the years do it, discharge those caps, and it creeps me out watching it. So my wife's father is a superintendent for an electrical company, and he's been an electrician his whole life, and he's like that. He touches electricity like it's nothing. It still freaks me out. So Harry says, happy Friday. Happy Friday, Harry. Let's see. Okay, here's one. Zumzul says, should I be worried that gold hardware is corroding? No, gold hardware doesn't last. It's because, first of all, a lot of times it's not gold. It's like basically colored chrome. You got to understand, like, you ever seen black chrome, right? The onyx looking stuff. It's really popular on Ibanez guitars. They can color chrome. We've seen blue chrome now and stuff. So nowadays, especially, nowadays, being in the last 20, 30 years, a lot of times you see gold. It's really a chrome that's been colored instead of silver to gold. So it just fades off. If there is gold or some kind of makeup of that, it's so microscopically thin that it just wears off like it's nothing. A lot of manufacturers that do high quality gold plating will put it on brass, so in hopes that it takes a longer to do that. But Yeah, there's nothing wrong with it. In fact, if you get gold hardware, I tell everybody, if you get gold hardware, you better fall in love with the idea of how it looks tarnished and old, because it's going to get there pretty fast. So, here's a question. I can't answer it, but I'm going to acknowledge it anyways. Eric is saying, what do I think of the V7, V8 pickup spot, Ibanez versus the PRS 8515s? I'd have to compare them to even know what is even different about them. So I don't know, but Eric, I wanted to acknowledge that you had that question. A pickup comparison question. I've said this before, and so I always keep consistent with this. When it comes to pickups, I always tell everybody, you use a pickup in your ear, not a comparative, right? If you notice when I do comparison videos, I try not to hang on those too much, and I actually try not to chop edit them so they're right on top of each other. It's never to me about A-Bing, because when you A-B, it's just like wine tasting. One will kind of corrupt your perception of the other. So if you try one pickup and then another pickup, you might hear one pickup being brighter, but it's only brighter in comparison. If you listen to it by itself on its own merit, you may have not found an issue with it. It happens all the time. And the best way to explain that is when you own something for a long period of time, it's part of you. You use it every day. It's something you're familiar with. If you heard it right now, you would recognize it. And then you compare it one day to something else, and now all of a sudden you hear it a different way. That does happen. So comparatively speaking, I can't tell you what's different about them, but I usually tell everybody it's not which one's better. It's about like or pass or fail. You either like them or don't. Jeff says, hey Phil, he's loving his CE too. I love my CE. Are you getting vibrations from the trim springs? Yeah, I am. What did I do to fix it? I haven't done anything, Jeff. I've been too lazy. As soon as I stopped. Yeah, just exactly what you're saying. As soon as I stop playing, I can hear them ringing underneath. Actually, funny you point that out, because I was thinking to myself a couple weeks ago, they were abnormally loud. Spring-wise, like I was thinking, man, if I record this guitar, it's gonna come up in the atmosphere of the room. So I'll probably put foam in them, right? Or what, actually might be a good time to try the the Floyd Rose upgrades, FU upgrades. They have a coated spring. They're like red and stuff, and I keep seeing them, and I keep thinking I need to try them, and this might be a good opportunity to give them a try and maybe see how that worked. And then Panhandle said, hey Phil, hey Panhandle, I saw the tweed pedal comparison video. I didn't watch it yet, but it's in my queue to watch. I put videos in a queue to watch. Usually on the weekend I get to do it. My week was so crazy this week. I just feel like it was Monday 5 seconds ago. Let's see. Next is Doug says, really like the videos and keep up the good work. I want to acknowledge that. Doug, thank you for saying that. I really appreciate you watching and joining us today. Like I said, this is like a conversation, right? Here's a good one. Full Metal Chef, the Full Metal Chef says, your opinion on English-made Celestion speakers versus Chinese. Now here is a great question, right? The Celestion speakers are all now pretty much 99.99% made in China, and so, which ones are better, the old British ones or the new Chinese ones? Well, the problem I have is I can't tell, because to hear the difference, I would need two brand new speakers. Because what I'm having trouble with is when I hear an old British one, I go, oh, it sounds great. It's also worked in. I don't know if I notice a difference, right? I have a friend who's a speaker expert, and I mean like for a living, and he said no one can hear the difference. And so I trust him because he is a consultant for large arenas and stuff, and he does all this stuff with really high-end pro audio speakers. So it's hard to tell. I've decided at this point that I haven't heard anything that questions it. I do have both, I have a couple cabinets in the room that have new Chinese Celestions, and I have an actual old British greenback, and it's great, but it's great because it's been worked in, came with a used amp. So what amp would you recommend to pair up with the Bassbreaker 15? Like an AB rig? I don't know. For like a wet dry sound or something. I mean, it's comparable to so many amps, right? I like the Jet City 20 watt amps for $399. You can't beat those. Let's see. Oh, okay, here's a good one from Scott. Says he's from San Diego. I love San Diego. I go every summer. Any good recommendations on things to keep our gear clean? Any good guitar cleaning kits? Well, for guitars, I use Dunlop 65 polish. Sometimes use the Fender polish, but mostly I use the Dunlop 65 polish. My theory on that is very simple. If I ever have an issue with one of the polish doing any damage to my guitars, I know who I'm calling. I'm going to call Dunlop. So that's why I use that. I've used Lizard Spit. It's really good, although it's important to use a microfiber cloth to get it off, because I think it's like a silicone based or something. And then for cleaning everything else, believe it or not, I used to use like vinyl cleaner, but now I use guitar polish to clean the vinyl on my amps. I don't know if that's a good idea, but I spray it on the cloth and just get the dust off. I live in Arizona. It's very dusty here. There's dust everywhere. So Dylan wants to know, will you give us another opportunity to invest in your website concept? I'd like to pledge money to that part. Yeah, I want to, like I said, guys, I wanted to fund it myself. I just want it up and ready. Its goal is to be, for March, have it up and ready, and then we'll talk about what we want to do with it. Again, the whole concept of this channel is not, it's not different than any other channel, really. It's about, doing some videos and kind of educating people, but then building this kind of fun community where all talk and we all learn together and have some fun. And I think that website is going to be the thing that kind of ties people together. I really believe that we are going to start interacting this way as much as or more so than personally. So why not lean into that a little bit? There is next. What is next? Next is Roy wants to know, what do I think of the Hamer guitars? I saw they released them at this year's NAMM. He bought a used double cutaway gold top with P90s, and it's every bit better than a Les Paul. Got it for $200. Yeah, Hamer guitars are great. The new ones I did not try at the NAMM show, so I don't know. I heard the Tone King talking about them, and he didn't seem as excited, but it looked like he had a little nostalgia going on there for his old ones. I understand that feeling. As much as I think the new Ibanez's kill everything on the planet compared to old Ibanez's, they're so good. I still kind of yearn for the old Ibanez's, right? You always want, the older stuff a little bit. But no, Hamer's good stuff for sure. Garrett wants to know, review of the Sun Zero 20 watt amp. I'm waiting like everybody else, Garrett. I'm on it, man. I'm like, I gave up asking the Paul Reed Smith guys. I literally just have it tagged, I think, on Musician's Friend and Sweetwater to see if they're getting theirs in stock soon. As soon as one comes in stock, I'll have one. So I'm really excited to try that one and compare it. The idea for that video, so you know, is I'm going to compare it against the Archon 25 and a couple other amps. I was thinking maybe taking the Senzera 50 watt and comparing that to the Hot Rod Deluxe. Right, those do some comparisons for the sake of, you're probably familiar with one amp, so if I compare that amp to this other amp, you'll have a reference of where it is. Benny wants to know fast picking tips. Yeah, I'm picking fast anything tips. I hate to say it, it's metronome and hitting on the metronome. If you want to pick fast, you have to pick clean. I am not a fast picker. However, and my biggest regrets in life, and a lot of guitar players will say this, is that I just said that advice, and sometimes in my life I've kind of wavered from it, and I really hear where I really mess up. Sometimes, right, you never want your left hand going faster than your right hand. So always kind of keep that in mind. Let's see. Okay, here's a good one. Mike says, hey, got some humbuckers that are really hot and distort when playing clean. If I turn the volume down on the guitar, something about okay, hold on. I don't want to lose what you're saying. Okay, so he's basically, lose, L-O-D-E, but it's supposed to be L-O-C-E. I know, I see, I know. All right, let's start again. Ready? So Mike is basically asking, he's got some hot humbucker pickups. They're distorting even on clean. If he turns the volume down on the guitar, he's in the dynamics. Mike, don't forget that pickups are like microphones, proximity wise, right? So lower those pickups down. A good rule for me is, if they're really hot and they're causing strings to break up, I'd get those suckers at least, an 1/8 inch away minimum to a 1/4 inch away, and then see where that gets you. And think about this, there's no wrong answer. I've heard and read online so many companies saying this is the correct placement of a pickup, but the truth is that's a guideline. So so just use your ear. I always use my ear, right? Just lower the pickups and you'll hear it. Sometimes you'll lose the harmonics and the dynamics of the sound of the guitar and you feel like, okay, that's too far down, and you bring them up. But you need to set pickup height. I find so many times I've saved somebody a ton of money because they'll bring in a guitar to have pickups swapped out, and I'll just immediately adjust their pickups and hand in the guitar back to them. They plug in and they go, "Oh, I love these pickups." I'm like, yeah, it's because they got to be set right. So sometimes they don't get set right. So make sure that gets done. Let's see. Max is from Bisbee, Arizona. Bisbee's a cool place. And what multi-effects processor is the best for rock player with a decent selection of amps? That's tough, right? I mean, processors, there's so many good ones, the Zoom ones. The problem with processors is they're a technology. So it's like, to me, it's like I know whatever I recommend, I might be a year behind or a month behind. This year is my year I'm going to be messing with more multi-effects units because those questions come up, and I'm curious myself. I've been out of it for about a year or so since I know it's relevant in multi-processors. And very lame, I would probably pick like a Boss ME70, but I don't know if I could recommend it for somebody else. But for me, it's kind of a cool pedal. Let's see. Okay, here Chris has a good question. He wants to know, he's from Toronto, Canada. Hello, Canada. Says he was wondering what you thought about putting a master volume in your amp rather than using an attenuator to get the gain at lower volumes. Well, Chris, a lot of people do it. I never discourage anybody from what you feel like you need to do. However, I can only tell you what I would do in that case, and I don't ever recommend modding anything that can't be removed without anybody noticing it's gone. The problem you're having is if you have an amplifier, okay, and you put a master volume in it and you don't love it, right? Now you've devalued it, and now your next decision is going to be based on that. And the other thing I find a lot of people do, and I'm guilty too, is you'll do the master volume and you may not love it, but you'll convince yourself you'd like it more than you think because you just put money and time in it. So the gear thing I do, my advice I give myself, sometimes I'm not smart enough to follow my own advice, but sometimes I am, is if you like it or love it, make it better. If you don't like it, don't try to make it good, because the truth is if you don't like it, you already don't like it. So if you like that amp, it turned up, but as attenuators go, I mean, I know there's a lot of downfalls to them, but I'm also curious if you tell me what amp it was. So and here one says, here's a question that says, what do you think of Steinberger instruments? They were great back in the day, right? Gibson owns them now and really isn't doing anything with them. The old headless headstocks, they were a great guitar. I bought one. Remember Music Yo? Does anybody remember that website where you get really great Kramers and Steinbergers for nothing? If you guys didn't know that website back in the day, that was the best deal ever. Gibson finally shut it down. So anyways, Steinbergers were cool, right? But sadly enough, I think there's a list of guitars now that are just, they're like Saturn cars and, whatever brands are gone, right? Pontiac. Is Pontiac still around? What's the other one that gone, right? It's just, they're brands that are gone now. Okay, so Star Guitar Works says, I've never seen you mention Vox. What's your thoughts on the Vox AC30s? AC series. I like the Vox AC series. It's just loud. The 15's kind of a loud amp, but the 30s are really loud amp. They're great amps. But Vox, for me, they sound great, and then for me, when I plug into them, it's too bright, right? I watch guys pull it off with Strats, and it sounds great, but me, I've never had that luck. Let's see. There's a question from Drew, and he's saying, hey, what's the best guitar strings, electric, for half step down or standard drop C? It depends on the guitar, but bigger strings are better. Whenever you're down tuning, bigger strings are better. If you have a Les Paul and you have 10s, you've got to go to 11s or 12s. If you have a Strat, you're 9s, you got to go 10s, 11s, or do hybrid strings. So low strings are usually the better way to go. Oh, okay, Cam Demand, baby on the way. Any tips on soundproofing the studio? Love the show. Thank you, Cam. Cam, I'll tell you a secret. When I first had my son, I talked to the doctor and I said, look, I like to play guitar, and I don't want to use headphones, but I don't want to do anything. And so the advice the doctor gave me, and I followed it through my daughter and everybody else, is don't play too loud. Don't damage anybody's hearing. But if you're playing at a reasonable volume, just play all the time. Don't worry about that. They'll tune you out. I found it to be very true. So that will help. Otherwise, for soundproofing, I mean, I hate to say it. I mean, the only thing you do is buy soundproofing panels and stuff, but it'll just dampen sound. It's going to be tough to soundproof. Headphones are the best deal for getting totally soundproof. But like I said, I would try to acclimate them as much as possible to it. So let's see. Let's go down a little bit. I'm missing some more. Okay, here we go. Okay, here's a good. Ben wants to know, hey Phil, he has an older Peavey Valve King. Older meaning I'm sure it means made in the USA. Valve King, or maybe it's just one of the import ones, but towards the end. And he wanted my opinion on would it be worth it to replace the stock speaker with a Celestion V30? Yeah, you know why? Because that speaker is a speaker that you can put in. You just keep the original speaker in the box, and if you ever get rid of the amp, you just swap it back. That V30 will just keep going in every amp, right? Amps like that, if they're 8 ohm or 16 ohm, that's very normal, so you're fine. Unless you're buying some kind of crazy 4 ohm speaker, then we go back to that first question I had about the 8-inch speaker. If it's odd, it's going to be hard to get rid of. But no, do that because, like I said, if you love it, it's great, and it doesn't cost or mar anything to do it. So why not give it a try? Let's see. Oh, Tom 2009. Is it better to do live instruction or video? It is better to do live instruction. Instruction is easy, right? It's never about good or it's never about well. Let me back up. I'll just keep it easy. I don't want to get too complicated. Here's how I look at it. The best instruction is one-on-one private instruction. That's the best. That's why it costs the most. Then after that, each type of instruction, whether it be videos or interactive live or a computer-based software or a book series or whatever, each one is good. A classroom, each one is good, but each one is less powerful because the ability, when you're doing this, your ability to adjust and ask questions is very important. So do you need live instruction? Absolutely not. You can do this, right? You could do it with no instruction. That's the beautiful thing about this, but it is the best. It is better. So do you have to have it? Absolutely not. Like I tell everybody, you just do your budget. The only thing I give everybody grief for is never be frustrated if you don't have to be. That's the only thing. Don't throw money away. Who wants to do that? But don't ever sit there frustrated over some $25 if you could just pay and get somebody to help you with something. So always do that. Let's see. Next is, whoops, let's go. Here we go. And next one is, hold on a second. It jumped. Now I lost. I'm back on track. Let's see how many people are on. There's 416. So, like I said, sometimes the questions stack up. And if I miss one, I always apologize. Here's one. Here's a good one. Hey Phil, whatever happened to the BC Rich guitar? Seems like all the 80s guitars are back and cool again, but not BC Rich. BC Rich is it's had some problems, and here's why. Bernie Rico, doesn't have the company anymore. And then if you're familiar with BC Rich, Bernie Rico Jr. kind of did something with it, and that was not very good. Right? That's an understatement for that disaster, right? You can just Google that. I don't have to bring up the dirt on that, but it's not a good story. Let's just say that. And then the company got acquired by somebody else, and right now I think Praxis is building it for whoever owns it, or maybe Praxis owns it. If you're not familiar with Praxis, they make the Sterling by Music Man. So the import Music Man. See, Praxis made those. What were those? What were the original Music Man copies called? They were called something else. Remember, they weren't Music Mans. They were something else. OLP, officially licensed product. So OLP was made by Praxis, and then eventually they got the contract to actually put the Music Man or Sterling logos on them. So that's Praxis. Now Praxis is making the BC Rich, which is better. But the problem with BC Rich is that it's jumped hands so many times, and let's be honest, it's a metal guitar company, and the metal hasn't been popular. Every horrible thing you can think of having a company has happened to BC Rich. The other big, I think, hit for BC Rich has always been when they got desperate at one point, they let Guitar Centers stock only the lower end models. And what happens is, you got to understand, each kid comes in the store and their perception of the product line is what they see. And if you were a kid and your only perception of BC Rich is music packs with an amplifier and $199 and $399 guitars, you're not going to perceive it as being a high-end brand. So that really hurt them over time too. So Jasmine wants to know, what's my opinion on Fulltone pedals? Fulltone pedals are really good pedals. The OCD is a classic pedal. The Plimso is really good. The Clyde McCoy Wah is a very good pedal. The Deja Vibe is one of my favorite tremolo pedals. Mike Fulton, though, I've had personal experience with him. He's a little interesting to deal with. He's a little gruff, right? But I've never had a bad experience with him or any of his pedals. Just, like I said, he's a little gruff to deal with. But pedals, quality's fine. No issues as far as I know. I hear rumors that if you have issues and you deal with them, it's a little difficult. I don't find that too far-fetched. I wouldn't spread that rumor if it wasn't for the fact that my interaction with him was a little interesting in the hostile part. He was a little gruff. Again, no personal problems, no fights, just, he's not a charming individual, at least through email and stuff. But, he builds pedals. That's his job. Let's see. So here's one. I went to the pawn shops yesterday and had a 1989 Kramer Beretta, blue and mint. He wants $600 for it. Is that a good price? I'm not sure. Is it an American Kramer? Those guitars, here's the deal with 80s guitars. Ibanez's, like what I have here, the Kramers, the Jacksons, the BC Riches, you name it. Here's the thing about those guitars, remember. They are like stock. They are volatile. They'll go up and down. So you can buy it for $600 today and it'll be worth $300 tomorrow. You buy $600 today and it'll be worth $1,000 tomorrow. You're always taking a chance. So what I only recommend is this. You only have two courses of action. Buy it at the absolute lowest or buy it when you want it the absolute most. In other words, so it doesn't matter what it costs because you want it so much. So in that case, what I would ask you is if you really, really, really want it super bad, you should buy it. If you think you kind of want it, I would try to get it for less. So, Dominique says, I don't know what I'm trying to say. Anyways, here's a question. It says, fuzz, love it or hate it? You know what it is? Fuzz is, I love it. I use fuzz into overdrive to get that kind of Eric Johnson, Joe Bonamassa slash kind of sound. Love it. I love Weezer. They're one of my favorite 5 bands of all time. So they're right. Fuzz is easy. It's like anything. If you like bands that use it, you like it. If you don't like bands that use it, you don't like it. I also have an appeal to it because it's very mysterious, right? And the fact that it sounds like crap most of the time. So when musicians get it to sound good, it's not only good, it's like, wow, right? It's kind of a funness to it, right? Because how did they do that? And I get addicted to trying to figure that out. So I've spent a lot of time learning as much as I can about fuzz. Let's see. Buzzsaw63 says, good low wattage, high gain amps other than the Blackstar HD5. Absolutely, the Jet City. Go to Musician's Friend, unless Sweetwater has it too or whatever. Jet City makes a 20 watt amplifier for $390 or $369. It cannot be beat. It's a great amplifier for that price range. Highly recommend it as well, comparatively to the HD5. 15 more watts will get just as quiet. It doesn't have 2 channels like the Blackstar, and it doesn't have reverb like the Blackstar, but it is definitely a quality amp, especially in that price range. That's the price range. If your price range doesn't matter, well then HD5, there's a ton of things that are better because there's nicer stuff because it's more expensive, but it's nicer. Let's see. Big Idea 100 says, what music are you listening to at the moment? I can tell you exactly what I was listening to today. Today I was listening to Tremonti and Shinedown in the vehicle, but most of the time I will listen to Bowling for Soup or Weezer, Monty Montgomery, right? My top 5 favorite bands are Bowling for Soup is my favorite band. I listen to them every day. So they're my favorite band. I love Bob Schneider. He's probably my second favorite band of all time. Then Monty Montgomery. Then Tremonti, which would also be Alter Bridge. I don't care which one. And then Weezer. Those are my top 5 bands. For me, that's what I listen to all the time. But, as time goes by, I'll probably pick new bands. So, okay, so here's a good question. It says, hey, what's up from H-Town? If you were starting to learn guitar, what blues scales or songs would you learn first? Thanks. Well, you said blues scale, so I'm going to assume you're into blues. So what songs I would learn first are basic, what I call blues standards. Just get those out of the way. That's easy. You can Google those, type in something like the 5 blues standard songs, right? And then those scales will be easy because blues is great because it's one of those musics that loves to live in in the same key basically. So it's a fun music because you get to move around in it using technique more so than tons of musical. I don't want to say knowledge because that's not. I love the blues, so I don't want to say anything negative or imply anything negative. But yeah, it's a lot less complicated than classical and jazz. But it's one of those things, like it's easy to get the foundation of it, but very hard to get the nuances. So just get a basic standard blues song, find one, like a 1-4-5 progression, and just play. Let's see. Okay, here's a good question. Drew wants to know, hey Phil, 25-inch scale versus 25.5-inch scale, which do you prefer? I prefer 25.5-inch scale. Paul Reed Smiths are 25. I don't mind the 25s, but I don't find an advantage to it. I don't play them and notice them. If you would have told me that they were 25.5s, I would never know, vice versa. So I don't notice anything about them necessarily to improvement. But I do like the longer scale a little bit. I like the little tighter string. Duncan wants to know, what happened to Victory amps? Well, I'm applying what happened with me in Victory amps. I can tell you that. I can't tell you what Victory amps doing. Victory amps, and what happened was I wanted to become a dealer. I talked to them. I talked to Chapman about being a dealer. This is a couple years ago, 2 years ago, whatever. Not this year, last year. And we became a dealer, and it was a very long, sordid, horrible process. And it was one of those things where each horrible thing that happened wasn't a big deal, but when I got to the end and I realized, this was not a very good experience for anybody, and so I decided that I was just done. So what happened was, first, there was, and I own responsibility for a lot of this too, so First, there was a big miscommunication about what the things were going to cost and how much the buy-in was. And so I chucked it up as that was my mistake. Maybe I didn't ask the right questions. I thought I was very clear, but maybe I wasn't. The second thing was how the form of payment had to be done. I had to wire it. And if you know anything about wiring money, you know that not only do you have to pay to wire money, but then there's exchange rates, and so that was tough. I was aware of the fact that the shipping prices I thought were very, very high, and I was very clear about them having the fees, custom fees included, which they weren't. But when I got them, I didn't realize how bad the custom fees were going to be. Again, that's on me. Not a big deal. But what happened slowly was I had a couple bad experiences with their products. And to say the easy part is this, and this is not, not to be rude or anything. There really was no assistance from them to help the customers. So in every case, I was helping the customers 100%. And so when I brought that to their attention, they weren't rude or disagreeable. They just were non-empathetic. They didn't care. So that made it pretty much easy for me. But the final straw was I just realized that in the amount of amps and products I bought, I had a pretty high defective rate as well. So I was like, wow. And then when I voiced my concerns about these first issues, the fees, the cost and stuff, they kind of alluded that's just how it is. But then towards the end of our arrangement, they made an announcement to all the dealer base that they had changed those and they were no longer going to do things that way, and they were going to do it a much easier way, which means a lot of dealers were complaining, and I didn't appreciate being told and treated like I was crazy for asking these questions when I think obviously every dealer had the issue. That's why they changed. So long story short, what felt like maybe it wasn't that great experience really was one of the top, if I was going to say the top 5 worst product experiences I've ever had since I was a dealer, Victory would be up and running for sure. They were definitely in the top 5. I don't know if they were number 1, but they were close. So that's what happened with Victory amps. There you go. And there you go. But on a positive note, I love the Sheriff 22 a lot. It was a great amp. I just don't feel like supporting them. So that's what happened. All right, and I do prefer the Friedman a little better sound quality. So that kind of worked out for me. Okay, so 225 Tryman says, hey, he got a new Fender triple telly. That's cool. I love New Guitar Day, right? Story Store Dave says, do you use Boss pedals? I absolutely do. I have apparently none. I have them everywhere. I have a Boss CE chorus. I have a Boss compressor. I have a Boss. They're all over the place. I don't know where they're at right now. I have a Boss. Boss 63 reverb. Boss RC1. I have a Blues driver. I think I said that already. I have a DD3. Love Boss. Boss is bulletproof quality forever, right? You know what I tell everybody is I love having pedals. There's a lot of great pedals, but if you ever put me in a situation where you said, hey, I want you to play tonight, but if it doesn't go perfect, you're fired. That would be a row of Boss pedals for sure that night. Because I know this, they would work the entire night and they'd be fine. So you can't hate that. And the quality is always good. So here's a good question. Hey, Phil, I have an Ibanez RG570. Love how it plays, but kind of dislike the tone. Yeah, that's been my fight with Ibanez forever. Should I swap the trim block, the whole trim, or the whole body of the guitars? Neither. Pickups. Pickups are going to fix that by far. Pickups. Think of it this way. You're saying the car doesn't ride that nice, so instead of changing the shocks of the tires, you're like, hey, could I mess with the seat fabric? And you're like, no, don't go that. Don't get that involved yet. Start with pickups first. Pickups are going to be a huge part of the tone of the guitar. So that's what you have to do. Let's see. D Snap says new guitar for him. 2016 Les Paul Standard T. That's a great guitar. Let's see. Devin wants to know how reliable are the Fender Princeton reverbs from 82 to 83. I don't know. I couldn't tell you. Right? I've never heard anything, but I'm sure you can go on forums and figure that out. So it's just tough. It's tough to pick that, a 2-year period and say how reliable is the amps. I don't know. Those are definitely CBS era amps before Fender got acquired back by itself. So who knows? What do you think of the Music Man neck? I like the way the Music Man necks feel. Right? I've owned a bunch of Music Mans and I always like the neck feel. I don't know why it is with Music Man for me. I don't know why I don't keep them, but I love them. I have them. I think they sound great and they play great, and then they just don't stick. Marshall versus Friedman amps. Well, I'm going to say Friedman because I do have a Marshall Class 5, but really, for my needs, it's Friedman right now. Overall, I think Marshall's better, for the history of it. But for me, I'm going to say Friedman. And I think it's going to think of it this way. Let's make it easy so I don't have to guess. Friedman is growing. They're making more and more amps, and they're improving, and their pedals, and they're doing, they're out there. And Marshall's basically making iPhone covers and headphones and Bluetooth speakers. I don't even understand Marshall anymore. And if anyone does, please put it in the comments. Explain it to me. I would love to hear somebody's explanation of, other than that it's a branding play, that it's easier to sell Marshall t-shirts, Marshall glasses, phone covers, right? I never do this. I even once so disinterested with Marshall once. They once did a feed about when they did their eyeglasses. I said, that's great. You have sunglasses. However, why don't you make a new amplifier for us to buy? And they said, oh, you'll see. And then they came out with another Bluetooth amp. So I'm like, I don't know. So. Malcolm says, hey, I'm tuning my low E string to an A. Is that a bad idea? Nope. Tremonti does it all the time. If you look at Alter Bridge tunings, they do that all the time. He does it, just the E strings tuned to an A. So check out some Alter Bridge songs. Okay, so Miller wants to know, Philip, what do you think the best Fender reverb amps are for live? Right? Oh, and recording. Deluxe, Super, or Princeton, Twin. Deluxe, right? Princeton. Well, live, depends on how loud you need it live. The Twin is amazing. Let's be honest. It's the best of the bunch. It's just you got to be able to have a purpose for 80 watts and two 12-inch speakers. So if you do, the Twin is amazing. It's full. It's huge. It's dynamic. There's nothing to not love about a Twin. I have a Princeton 68. I have a 65 Deluxe. I love both those for different reasons. For at-home practice, I would pick the Princeton, but for live gigs, I'd play the 65 Deluxe. So, Scott Cushing said, what's my favorite bass player? My favorite bass player is either Michelle Indeocello. If you know who she is amazing bass player. She's got the tone for sure. Or Marcus Miller. Now, I have a huge... I love Stu Hamm, but he's not my favorite. He was my first bass player I got into. That's why I have a Stu Hamm bass. Just like Steve Vai. I have a Steve Vai and a Stu Hamm because they were like the first real big guitar and bass players I ever heard, and I thought these guys were amazing. And then you find Victor Wooten, and then you find Reggie Hamilton, and right, and there's just a plethora of amazing guitar players, but and bass players. But bass players for me, my favorite is Michelle and Deocello, and then Marcus Miller, and they kind of buck for and Michelle and Deocello mostly because I've never met her. I met Marcus Miller, although I totally just I cringed because I was just felt so embarrassed because he's so cool. I felt so scared talking to him. He's the only person I've ever met that's a famous musician that I just had no cool when I was talking to him, because to me he's just so iconically huge to me. Let's see. It says 19 Chris Noon 65. Hey Phil, Chris in Mesa, is your store closed now? No, the retail is. Tomorrow's the last day for retail at the shop. There'll be stuff at the store, whatever's left, or at the end of the day, they're gonna box up and store it and get rid of it. Reverb will continue until August, because that's important that we finish out any contracts or deals we have for the year. The store, though, the actual location, if you're in the area, that's the Lesson Academy now in repairs. So if anything, I'll be there more. We'll be there more. The hours are going to expand out because we're going to be focused now on those two avenues. I don't take in as many repairs as I possibly could because I'm time constraints. But now I don't have any restraints. I'll be doing a lot more repairs than I've ever done before. And lessons. In fact, the teachers are excited because without the retail there, the teachers were kind of hindered on how many hours they could work each week, because for if the retail hours are bad but the lessons wanted to be there, we had to have somebody to cover the store even though there was no business, and it was a cost point that factored against the lessons. Without that hindrance now, the lessons are going to go, the store will start opening on Fridays and Sundays. Like I said, the Lesson Academy will be in full swing, and that'll start next week. I'm very excited about that. It's the most excited I've been in 5-6 years. I love it. I love just interacting with everyone and not having to worry about all the other stuff. So I can just make video content, talk to people, do repairs, do lessons. I'm going to be teaching myself, also doing some tech walks again. Let's see. Henry says, hey, what's your opinion on Laney amps? Cheers from Riverside. I've tried some Laney amps in the past. I think the Ironheart is one of the new ones that I'm curious about. It's blue, but I really don't have a huge experience with them. So can't really tell you exactly. Let's go to the next one. It says, let's see. Let's find a good question. I'm trying to find all the cool. You guys have a lot of great questions, but I'm trying to find the ones that I think are kind of stick out and help everybody the most. All right, here we go. Here's a question. What do you think of high-end Washburn guitars? Well, Washburn guitars, when you mean high-end, Washburn doesn't really have an American custom shop anymore. So we're going to say high-end is in the $600 to $1,200 range. Very good experiences with Washburn. Washburn was the very first manufacturer I ever had as a dealer. I literally signed that deal in the front room of my house before I even had a store. And so I have a special place in my heart for Washburn. I'm a huge Nuno Bittencourt fan, and he's a Washburn guy. I'm a huge Jennifer Batten fan, and she was a Washburn artist. So Washburns to me are always been cool. They're really amazing, affordable acoustics too. So I think they're good. They do fall into the category of you can score an amazing deal, right? Which always makes it cool too, because it's a hidden guitar. You can find really great Washburns for nothing. I was looking last night, or maybe the night before, and there was Godins and Washburns, and I was looking at them, and you can find them for almost nothing. So let's see. Nicholas want to know what I think of Tone City pedals. I have not tried them. Those are the ones I saw the Chapman guys review, right? I haven't tried them yet. In fact, I thought they weren't available in the U.S., and I think they are now, and I just haven't had a chance. I will. It's a pedal, which means I'll probably eventually find my way to it. So, let's see. Mr. Bojangle says, hardtail or Floyd Rose? Question mark. If you're asking me what's my preference, I prefer hardtail over Floyd Rose, but just because it's easier, faster to tune it and put strings on it. And let's see. Next one. Let's find a good one. It jumped, so let me go back. Here's a good one. I have a stock Epiphone Dot. What pickups would you recommend to get the blues rock tone? Should I do the mod myself? Yes, you should do the mod yourself. It's very expensive to put guitar pickups in any kind of hollow body guitar. It's because it's time. It's time, right? It's the time it takes. It's not the expertise or how difficult it is. So I would look at doing that yourself if you can. It's a nice project. There's a ton of great pickups. I'm gonna go with the easy ones for me. I've installed a ton of Seymour Duncan 59s, dual 59s, and Dots. Always a great experience with that. Everybody always likes it, what they hear. It's because they're lower output pickups, very vintagey. Another example of affordable but also great pickups in those range would be the PAF Pros by DiMarzio. Same thing, very very smooth, light output. And when in doubt, you can always put Gibson pickups in there because it'll give that more of that Gibson sound. But all those pickups are really good. Is it hard to do a setup on a guitar for a beginner? Bob, that's from Bob. Bob, it's not because, well, let me start this. So I have the video series. I talked about that a couple weeks ago. It is coming out. I'm 50-60% done. And in that series, it's not so much to even tell you guys how to do setups, is just explain a bunch of stuff. And the one thing about setups is you need to think about it, compartmentalize it. So first thing you have to get good at is diagnosing problems. Be able to see the problem. Don't take it to somebody and have them tell you what the problem is. It doesn't matter if you can fix it or not. I think it's important that if you can figure out what's wrong with it, and even if you can't fix it, or when you're talking to a luthier or a tech and they're explaining what's wrong with it, you understand what they're saying, because you don't want to be, it's your instrument, you don't want to be at the mercy of somebody else. So the first step to setups is don't worry about how to set up a guitar. Learn to recognize issues with guitars. And that's the first series of the videos I'll be talking about, is how to diagnose problems. What are you looking for? How do you look at it? Not how do you fix it, but what is it, so we can at least know what it is that we need fixed, and then we'll worry about how to fix it. So that's my first. And then Stu Mac has great videos, and you can watch those too. Wheels Easy Guitar has some good videos. I mean, there's a lot of great videos, and to be honest, I'm leaving out a ton of people as well that are great too. So it's an easy search away. But like anything, you get confused because there's so much information. But let's see. Hectone says, "Hey Phil, great channel. Learned a lot, so much from your videos. Thank you, thank you, and thank you." It says, "What do you think of the Hagstrom Retroscape Hill? Please, thanks." I don't know the Hagstrom guitars by models. I have owned Hagstrom guitars. I really liked the Hagstrom I had. I had a Les Paul style one with the dual switches. I don't know what you call that. I don't know why I can't remember what it was. I love the fretboard. I got rid of it because that's when I got my first Gibson. I got rid of it and got my first Gibson. And then I realized the Gibson wasn't as nice as the Hagstrom. So, But once you go that route, you're there. That's the thing. Okay, let's see. Okay, Boz says, "Hey Phil, hair care savings per year, maybe one MIM Telecaster." Haha. He's just trying to make me laugh. You do make me laugh. It's funny. I'll actually tell you a funnier story, Boz. How about this? Next to the shop, they just spent $500,000 building a giant hair salon. And the owner of the hair salon, who owns many hair salons, came in the shop and asked me what I thought of the area before they picked that spot. And I said, "Oh yeah, it's a good area." And they said, "Is there a lot of hair salons around here?" And I said, "How would I know?" So yeah, I have one hairstyle, this, which I've been shaving my head since, like I said, since I was 21. So think about that. It's a long time right? It's just been this way forever. I don't mind it at all, except for the fact that it's got one hairstyle all the time. Kind of sucks. So, but I got hats. You can wear hats if you want to change your hairstyle. Let's see. Jesse's saying, "Hey, top 10 list of famous guitarists you've met." You mean who are the most exciting people I've met? Well, because the NAMM show, you meet a lot of people either in an interactive way, but through usually these clinics and stuff I've met. And the problem with that is that you have to figure out how to sort that. Who is the most influential, biggest guitar players you've ever met? That's exciting. But then there's like the nicest people you ever met. The nicest people I've ever met by far is Larry Mitchell is definitely number one. Gary Hoey is probably second. They stick out because just just they're tremendously amazing people. I don't even want to talk about the fact that they're some of the greatest guitar players I've seen. They're just the nicest people I've ever met. So so that's great. But and then I'm sure if you guys are a little geeky like me, you know, meeting you know, then it goes into two categories: meeting your icons, you know, and then versus meeting just great musicians. And it's always nice when you meet great musicians. You know, Paul Gilbert was like really nice. But there's a list of musicians that I've met and I've had good experiences with, but it's really more of a, it's so passive, right? You know, I met Eddie Van Halen twice, and again, it was very passive. He was a great person. You know, he was nice. He shook my hand. We took a picture. We talked for like 20 seconds. He was, you know, right? He even got down on his knee because my son was there and talked to my son. So my son was at eye level with him. You know, I mean, that was great. But, you know, it's a weird experience because if you guys had this experience, you realize they're there and they're meeting everybody, you know what I mean? So it's not like a, you know, it's great to meet them and see them and take a picture with them, but you're not really meeting them. You're just getting to be next to them for a few minutes. Let's see. Sweet Low Sound says Facebook Live the last day of the store. Sweet. Oh yeah, you know, right? I'll do a Facebook Live. We might, except for keep in mind the store. It just the product's gone. The store is still there. We're not going to be moving from the store. We eventually will probably move, you know, to a different location. But when I say different location, either in that shopping center or across the street. But that has nothing to do with the retail. That'll have to do with just, you know, if you don't need the space, don't pay the rent. Okay, so I'm pretty sure what they're asking, Jerry's asking is basswood or basswood a lighter wood? Yes, it's a very light wood. In fact, so you know, basswood is not much harder than balsa wood. It is, but not much, and so it's a very soft wood, and so it's very light. Now, we are at the 5-minute warning, so I'm going to pick like 2 or 3 questions. Today went by really fast. I hope it went really fast for you guys too. Right? There are 427 of us hanging out. And here we go. Is the Fender Vaporizer a suitable bedroom amp for quiet for blues and Strat? The Fender Vaporizer, yeah, it's suitable. You know, obviously you can't get it to overdrive, Derek, unless you turn it up, but you can run a pedal through it. It's great. Jerry wants to know, do your kids play guitar? No, my daughter plays piano. My son is into video games heavily. He is, right? They have been both forced and were made to play music. My son played bass, and I made him play bass in a band for a little while. He's learned guitar a little bit, piano a little bit, and my daughter is mostly in dance, and my daughter goes to an art type school, so she's really into arts, the arts, so she's fine that way. But my dad was really into fishing, and I wouldn't have really enjoyed it if he made me a fisherman, more so than a guitar player. So I believe, you know, they got to follow their passion. So as long as they have a passion, that's all I care about. Bandit No Way Back says, hey, Philip, did you try a pedal set made with more pedals? I have tried the more pedals. They are very good pedals, and I actually own 3 or 4 of them. Really like them. Let's see. Somebody says, hey, don't know if it's off topic, but what's your take on the Bias FX? How does it compare to the real deal? I have not tried Bias FX, but I am very interested in those modeling type products right now to see how they are. Okay, here's a good question, and we'll do these are the last 2. So Fred's saying, hey, Phil, wondering how do you tell when tubes start to die? You know, I have asked that question to very influential amp builders over the years, tons of them, either personal friends or just people I knew that knew. And what I generally take from all that is, if your amp turns on, your tubes are fine, right? They all seem to lean into a pass-fail system. Do better tubes make a difference? Yes. Does new tubes make a difference? Yes. But essentially, when it comes down to it, as they fade, they will change the way it sounds. Because in a small weird theory of it is, think about it this way: every time you turn the amp on, you're degrading the tube. The tube is a diminishing resource. In other words, it's constantly never the same because it's, you know, the way it works. So it's, you know, you can't think of it like it's not as good as it was, because it's constantly not the same as it was. But there's, you know, so if it works, it works. So if that helps. Okay, so let's see. And I know I said that was it, but let's do two more for fun. What's the Union Jack pedal behind me? This is Taurus Pedals. This is called the Jack Boost. It's a boost pedal. Isn't it cool? He makes one called the Jeffro Boost on his website. It's purple, and I made the comment to him one day. I said, hey, you should put a Confederate flag on it. And then he said, okay, and he sent me one and said it's called the Jack Boost. And so it's the Jeffro Boost, just mine, the one he made for me. Looks like this, and I think it's cool. So this is a great boost pedal. I highly recommend it. And I'm sure if you ask him for the Jack Boost, he can even do this Union Jack in Subdued. But it's a great boost pedal. Let's see. And the last one. Ready? Here's two, real fast. Phil, best pickups for the money, DeMarzio or Seymour Duncan? I think they're the same. I have both my guitars. It's just a preference, right? It's a Ford Chevy thing. It's not a, right? So you just got to pick a brand, or I pick both, like me. And do-it-yourself pedal clones, are they worth it? For, those, I don't see it as the quality as the issue, or what you get as the issue is you're getting experience, and the experience is worth it. Because my experience is if you do a do-it-yourself pedal clone, you will really find out how easy most pedals are put together. But you also realize that you're paying for somebody's ear and how good they can make it. So, did I say Confederate flag? Did I say that? I thought I said Union Jack flag. So, sorry. I apologize for that. They both have that kind of X shape. So, I mean, no offense to anyone out there. Let's see. Oh, and then, okay, so I know we're running a little late, but come on, we'll just do it. The next one is Chuck says, what happened to the Gelvin guitar from the $1,000 challenge? I ordered it. I can't remember when it was. It was definitely around that time. I want to say we're like 7-8 months out. If you're familiar with his channel, he's kind of voiced that he's had problems. I heard somebody sent me an email that he mentioned that he's working on mine right now. And I might as well tell you guys, here's the plan. So as soon as I get it, I plan to review it, and then I want to do something spectacular. We're going to do a giveaway with it and do something really cool. I want to find somebody who doesn't have an amazing guitar and get it to them. And I'm saying that so you guys know how honest this is. Obviously, regardless if I love the guitar, don't love the guitar, I don't plan to keep it. I plan to do it. I plan to do that from the start, and it's because that was my intention, was to help a small builder and help somebody out there who could use a really nice guitar and get to try it, right? And so, again, that was my plan. We'll see what happens. I'm really excited about that, and I plan to do a really in-depth review of that guitar. Let's see. And I think that's it. There's a bunch of questions, and I'm sorry if I missed anyone's questions, but of course, it gets a little tricky. As always, guys, I really appreciate you spending some time with me. Like I said, we'll plan to do this every Friday, and I answer as many questions as I can. And I hope you guys have an amazing weekend as well. And as always, I want to thank you for your time, and know your gear. And